So one thing that I have struggled with throughout this class and then also throughout the rest of my life was proofs for the existence of God. Oftentimes it feels like people are trying to prove a negative, and obviously that's not a good argument. It's not a good thing to say. Telling somebody to prove that Bigfoot doesn't exist there's a reason that we don't say that, because it's not a good argument. To say the same thing when talking about God is pretty intellectually dishonest. So the pages that I'll be pulling from for this both come from the chapter about proving God. The first one is proving God by the created world. This is on page 18 of this chapter, and mostly it refers to Thomas Aquinas's 5 ways. This refers to the 5 senses, and how you need to just look around you and you can see like what there is. It's also brought by the analogy of a person finding a watch in a desert, or a person coming across a garden, and you look at that watch in the desert and you're like, wow, that's crazy, somebody must have created this watch. Or you come across the garden, you're like, wow, that's crazy, somebody must have put together this garden. But the problem with both of those arguments is that it's a creator being coming in contact with a created thing, or even if it was a sentient watch, a created thing. And that's not a balanced analogy, because a more accurate analogy would be a watch coming across another watch and saying, wow, look at each other, look at us, we're obviously created. That would be a more balanced analogy, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so people don't tend to use it. For the most part, you can't really prove the existence of God using just your 5 senses, because that is part of how God operates, but that's not the whole picture of how God operates. Another proof on the proof for God is based on reason. This is the idea of the what's it called? Ontological argument. This is the idea of saying God is so outside of our mind and so outside of our conceivable understanding that we couldn't possibly think about him. It also says that whatever the most perfect being we could possibly think of, that's proof for God exists. The fact that we are even thinking about the fact that a perfect being exists proves its existence. Just like a triangle, we know the properties of a triangle, right? The only problem with this is that a thing's existence is not one of its properties. That's the problem with a theodicy such as this ontological argument. It would be like saying, think of your favorite island, like your perfect paradise island. Thought of it? Does it exist? No, probably not. So why do we use the same thing when talking about God? And so I know I've kind of been bashing a lot of these ideas, and Thomas Aquinas and all of these guys, but we really haven't had a whole lot of secular humanist and atheist philosophers until recent times. So these ideas haven't exactly been under a whole lot of scrutiny. But I do think that there's a third category that should be added, and that is the category of morality. The things that make us all the same. Every culture, regardless of how that culture defines something like murder exists in every culture, regardless of the contexts of that culture. Whether it sacrifices humans or doesn't, whether it believes in all of these pantheistic gods or polytheistic gods or whatever. Like from the Aztecs all the way to the Romans, all the way to the Incas, all the way to the people in China, the Mongols, they all have a concept of murder. Why? We all have a baseline concept of what morality is. And if we also know that there is absolute evil. The most obvious example would be someone like Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, and all of those. 20th century just horrible people. But if we believe in absolute evil, by contrast, we have to believe in absolute good, which means we have a moral standard. If we have a moral standard, then that means somebody created that moral standard. And so this is something that Ravi Zacharias brings up, and I think it's an excellent point. When I came into this class and didn't exactly entirely know what I was talking about when it came to stuff like this, I would just think, oh yeah, evolution is false because you just look at this thing in nature that couldn't have possibly happened, and that would be my main argument is chance could not have possibly done this. The problem with that is that a thing plus time equals another thing. Like time will always create. I don't know, if you give something an infinite chance of creating, it's gonna happen. That's why life on alien planets probably exists, because there's trillions and trillions and trillions of planets. So the math lines up with there being possible life, and so that's what I would go towards. But now I have sources and all of these like ideas that I can pull towards and pull terminology from and have credible sources instead of just head thoughts that I've thought of or things that I did on YouTube. And as far as application goes, I've used this. I use it all the time. When I worked at Chipotle, I would talk to my coworkers all the time about Christianity, and one of my coworkers is Catholic, but she's also bi, which is weird. Another one of my coworkers is Christian, but he's also bi. It's kind of weird. Another one of my coworkers has so much church hurt he doesn't go to church anymore. Another one of my coworkers is pansexual. Like, and they all have all these different questions. And when I start talking to them, the thing that hurt them the most about Christianity, the thing that make the least sense to them about Christianity is the question that they asked. And because of stuff like this, I get to think with them, and I get to walk them through different things, and it makes sense to them. And I get to do it in a loving way that is often very contrary to the Christians that they have experienced in the past. And so I'm very fortunate that I get that opportunity. So I really enjoy this book. I really enjoy this class.